Well-being and gratitude has to become part of the everyday fabric of how we live, lead, and design our systems.
An inspiring individual who creates environments where people can thrive, and he's recently written a book called Gratitude, States of Being.
I think the truth is very few people feel like they belong right now. Very few feel like they're flourishing, and we're achieving more than ever, yet feeling less connected than ever. We live in this world where everything is about productivity, right? It's about achieving these goals. Gratitude roots us in what's real, what's still working, and what still matters, and that what still makes us human.
And it really is that organic word of mouth, asking people how they are, asking yourself, how do I feel?
I feel gratitude is where belonging begins, right? Because belonging isn't about being surrounded by people, it's about being anchored in meaning. Don't wait for life to be easy to feel grateful. Start where you are. Notice one thing. A breath, a face, a sound that reminds you you're alive. Gratitude begins there.
Hi, I'm Cathy Lowe from The Otherly, and today, as part of the Global Innovation Forum Spark series, I have the great pleasure in speaking to Dr. Gokul Krishnan. He's an inspiring individual who creates environments where people can thrive through connection, resilience, and belonging. And he's recently written a book called Gratitude, States of Being, which is here, a really moving and personal piece of work that we'll explore further. And we'll welcome Gokul. Hey, Gokul, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Cathy.
Welcome. I have your book in my hand, but we can come on to that in a moment. Could you briefly introduce yourself to our listeners and touch on your diverse experience, different roles? Over to you.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's always a hard question to talk a little bit about yourself, but a little bit about my background. I've always been drawn to understanding how people grow, learn, and find meaning, and that curiosity kind of took me from studying engineering to earning a PhD in learning sciences at Vanderbilt University, which was in Nashville, Tennessee, where I explored how environments shape creativity and connection. And during my time as a student there, I founded Maker Therapy, which was a project inside a children's hospital that used creativity and play to help young patients heal. And what began as a small experiment grew into something that served more than 1,000 families and was eventually recognized by the White House. Wow. But what stayed with me most was watching children who were facing pain rediscover joy through imagination. And that changed how I understood resilience and what it meant to create spaces where people can truly thrive. And after that, later at Google, I led research on inclusion and well-being, helping teams design environments where everyone could bring their full selves to work. And one of the projects closest to my heart was designing for states of being, which looked at how surroundings influence how we think and feel, and it helped leaders create spaces and rituals that supported very different emotional and cognitive needs. And finally, across all those experiences, from hospitals to global workplaces, the same truth kept emerging. What people crave most is a connection, a sense of being seen and valued. And that realization eventually led me to write Gratitude, States of Being, a book born from my own search for balance and presence in a world that rarely slows down.
And the book, Gokul, I have read this cover to cover, and it is a really genuinely deeply moving book. Can you tell us why the book came about, why you wrote it, and a few insights into your personal journey?
Oh, gosh, yes.
A big question. A big
it's a, it's a
question.
it's a big question. So the whole book, Gratitude States of Being, it isn't a leadership manual. It's not a book of inspirational quotes. It's the story of how gratitude became the thread that kept me from unraveling. And to understand why I wrote it, I have to take you back to where that thread began, inside hospital rooms filled with extraordinary children. For years, I worked with young people who were chronically and terminally ill. And some spent years in treatment, others only had months. But each of them carried a strength and presence that changed me. And my role at that time was to help them build things, small inventions to make their days a little easier. For example, one girl designed a pain meter to show how much she was hurting when words failed her. Another built something that helped her nurses and parents through long nights. And these weren't just objects, Cathy. And these weren't just projects that they were working on, they were lifelines. They gave the children dignity and a voice in a place that often took both away.
I remember, Gokul, when you were in the Global Innovation Forum, and you were on stage telling us about a boy who'd created a light.
Yep.
And everyone in that audience at Global Innovation Forum was moved. I was moved to tears, and you've touched, in the book, you've connected those experiences and brought them to life for us. So thank you. It's very, very, very emotional.
And that young patient, Brandon, is mentioned in the book, who created the nightlight for nurses and was a source of strength when I was writing the book. And it was all these kids that I worked with, Cathy, and it's, I worked with chronically ill patients, and then later I moved into the world of pediatric palliative care. And I created something called a legacy space. It wasn't a space about curing, it was about creating. And I remember one of the parents said something that I'll never forget. And she said, "This is not a place where my child died. This is a place where my child lived." And that moment rearranged me. And it showed me that gratitude isn't about erasing pain. It's about finding life inside it. And years later, when my own life felt tangled and heavy, I reached back for that lesson. And I remember those families and those children that I worked with. I remember what they taught me about how to live. And that's why I wrote the book. Not to offer quick answers or make gratitude sound easy, but to share what I had to learn again for myself. That gratitude isn't what comes after life is perfect. Gratitude is where it begins.
So one or two things that you just hope people take from the book, what would you highlight?
Gosh.
Distill it into, I'm sure there are a number, but if there were one or two that people took away from you writing that book, what would it be?
What I hope people take from, Gratitude States of Being is the understanding that gratitude isn't about pretending everything is okay. It's about learning how to stay open when life isn't, right? And so when I was writing the book, I wasn't in a sense of ease, right? I was exhausted, I was anxious and quietly searching for meaning while holding everything together on the surface. And I realized I wasn't alone. Everywhere I looked, people were saying the same thing in different ways. I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm doing my best, but it just doesn't feel like enough. And I think we're living through what I can only describe as a collective unraveling. The numbers tell one story. There's rising anxiety, there's burnout, there's depression, but the real story is quieter, right? It's the friend who disappears for weeks because they have nothing left to give, right? It's the colleague who smiles in meetings but feels completely unseen. It's the parent, the student, the leader who lies awake wondering, why do I feel so empty when I'm doing everything right.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk so much about flourishing and belonging, but
Yeah.
somewhere along the way, those words became buzzwords instead of birthrights. And I
Yeah.
think the truth is very few people feel like they belong right now. Very few feel like they're flourishing. And we're achieving more than ever, yet feeling less connected than ever.
Mm. And
And
what, yeah, I
yeah,
was going to say, why is that? Why is it getting worse? Is this mental health epidemic worsening? And why are we in this situation?
and I think the reason is I think we've lost that sense of like human connection, right? We've lost that whole sense of caring about each other, right? We live in this world where everything is about productivity, right? It's about achieving these goals, but we're forgetting about uh, kind of the basics, right? We're forgetting about
Mhm.
how are we actually doing? Am I
Yeah.
okay, right? And I feel that's where the whole aspect of like why gratitude matters, right?
Mm.
Because the I feel gratitude is where belonging begins, right? Because belonging isn't about being surrounded by people, it's about being anchored in meaning, right? And I
Yeah.
think gratitude roots us in what's real, what's still
Mhm.
working, and what still matters, and that what still makes us human.
You mentioned you've had your own struggles, and the book is obviously um, a personification of your mental health struggles in a way. Um, what support is there? Did you get support in any? Just trying to gauge: is there enough? Is there any support? Is there enough support? And where did you look?
Oh gosh, they're all deep questions, Kathy.
Yeah, they are. They are. They're all in a bundle, right? They're all bundled
Yes,
up together.
you know, um, there's I think there's definitely just getting to the whole topic of mental health, right? There's definitely more awareness
Mhm.
now, more than ever, right? Many organizations, are finally talking about mental health in ways that would have been unthinkable, like maybe like
Mhm.
10 years ago. You see companies, investing in therapy partnerships like Lyra, right?
Yeah.
That make professional care more accessible to employees. And a lot of these programs, which I've made use of, have opened doors for not only me, but like countless people who might have
Mhm.
never reached out to anyone, right? And that's worth, I feel, celebrating, right?
Yeah.
But the issue is, awareness and success, I feel, aren't enough. I think too often these efforts sit on the surface, right? They become something we
Mhm.
add on to the workday instead of changing how we design work
Yeah.
itself. And just going back to when I was driving inclusion and well-being programs at Google, such as the flourishing and gratitude initiatives, I saw that real transformation didn't come
Mm.
from a single tool or campaign, and it came from culture, right? From the way leaders listened, from moments of honesty, from
Mhm.
small, consistent acts of care, right? That made people feel safe to tell the truth about how they were doing, right?
Mhm.
So true support, Kathy, has to be systemic,
Mm.
not situational.
And Gokul, did you get that? Did you get any of that from the organisations that you've worked in?
I did, there was, making use of those resources was just one part of it, right? And I
Hmm.
think that's the whole aspect of, psychological safety, right? Those two words are
Yeah.
the really deep, right? It's like the goal was therapy is one part, right? You can talk to a therapist, you can engage use
Hmm.
of these support systems that organizations provide, but it's about the psychological safety truly exists, right? It's about how do you embed psychological safety into how teams, how people operate,
Hmm.
and treating rest and reflection as essential to performance, right? Not as rewards for it. So the answer is there's a lot of like support that there was provided, which I made use of, but it takes time, right?
Mm.
It's not a quick fix. It's not a magic pill.
Yeah.
It requires support, it requires empathy, it requires care, and it requires patience from all parties involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what's come out since you wrote the book? So you're doing gratitude workshops, you're doing other initiatives that have come out sort of naturally from the book and from your previous work experience. Can you talk a little bit more about how this has grown organically in your life?
Oh, yeah. So what I'm trying to do with my book is trying to shift a perspective, right? And because I think I've seen, spending time in hospital worlds to corporations, I've seen the challenges, right, that I have faced, right, and the bigger picture, kind of, can I use the word dreamy goals? Is the part of like the book was to shift a perspective from people, from leaders and like programs, from viewing gratitude as a seed for belonging and flourishing, right? I want, like, how can we use gratitude as a way from shifting from programs to presence, from checking boxes to building cultures that truly care, right? And I think we've made, like I said, we've made progress in talking about mental health, but now we have to go deeper, and well-being and like gratitude has to become part of the everyday fabric of how we live, lead, and design our systems. And so this is part of a longer journey, and changing perspective takes time. And I'm on that journey, right? I'm not giving up on that journey. If it takes me another 100 years, do we have a pill that can make me live for another 100 years?
We'll find one, Gokul. We'll find one.
And Cathy, that's the future I hope for, right? It's a future where, where mental health isn't about managing crisis, but about building belonging, where people, they don't have to reach that breaking point, right? And I feel gratitude is the seed where we can truly create communities where people flourish and find a sense of belonging.
To sort of wrap up a little bit, obviously you can go into detail here, but if you've got one or two thoughts or messages to leave the listeners with today to make that impact, what would they be?
Oh gosh, if there's one thing I want people to remember, it's that gratitude isn't about feeling good, right? It's about feeling alive, and it's not a reaction to a perfect life. It's the practice that helps us live fully inside an imperfect one. And every one of us is carrying something. There's stress, there's grief, there's uncertainty, there's self-doubt. And gratitude doesn't erase those things. It sits beside them and says, you're still here, there's still life. And it reminds us that even amidst all this chaos, there are moments of love and meaning waiting to be noticed. And the children and families that I worked with in hospitals taught me that gratitude isn't a luxury emotion, it's survival. It's how we hold on to humanity when everything feels fragile. And I feel, in a world where anxiety and disconnection are everywhere, gratitude becomes a quiet form of resistance, right? It slows us down, it softens us, and it brings us back to what's real. And so I just want to say, so don't wait for life to be easy to feel grateful. Start where you are. Notice one thing, a breath, a face, a sound that reminds you you're alive. Gratitude begins there.
Gokul, it's been amazing to chat. It really has. And the book, I hope, has as much impact on others as it had on me. And it really is that organic word of mouth, asking people how they are, asking yourself, how do I feel? As you say, if we all check in on each other, we don't know what's behind the person, right? The story behind the person. We've all got something going on. So thank you. It's been absolutely fantastic to chat and really appreciate your time.